now on GMA with our exclusive interview with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro in the wake of the arson attack on his home last weekend. The suspect is facing multiple charges, including attempted murder and terrorism. And George, you had a chance to sit down with the governor.
Yeah, I drove down to Harrisburg. You just saw those pictures of the destruction right there. It's pretty startling that an intruder was able to get inside the governor's mansion like that with Molotov cocktails, and you see how chilling that destruction is. It was a real sobering sight. Just hours after Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and his family celebrated the first night of Passover, 38-year-old Cody Balmer tried to kill the governor by setting fire to his official residence. How are you all doing? How's the family doing?
Yeah, we're doing okay. You know, our kids are resilient. Lori's been a rock. And I'm trying to be a good dad, a good husband, a good governor in that order.
But not the easiest thing in the world to deal with.
I think they've been really reassured, as I think we all have, by the outpouring of support that we've gotten from all corners.
Yeah, he scaled the fence somewhere right around here. Had a bag of, that contained some Molotov cocktails and a metal type of hammer. And our understanding is he kind of laid in wait here for
I heard maybe in that bush for a little while as well.
And he tripped off one of the security sensors here, which prompted a state trooper to come out and try and figure out what was going on.
While he was here?
While he was here. It was dark, and the trooper wasn't able to spot him. And that allowed him to come up here along this walking path and through the rose garden. He broke this second window here, the window on the right, hit it with a hammer, threw a Molotov cocktail in there. And that immediately set off
all the alarms, right?
Fire and explosion. And what appears from the footage is he didn't go through this window. He took a few more steps down here, past the double doors, and then this window, which also leads into the state dining room. He smashed this with the hammer. You can still see the glass on the ground.
Oh, yeah, you can see it. Oh, man, you can still smell.
And it is much better now. Just hours before, Lori and I were seated probably right about here at a long table conducting our Passover Seder.
And you had 3 of your kids home?
3 of our 4 kids were here. The other one was in college. A bunch of round tables. And we had our family, we had, I get emotional just thinking. At our family, we had guests from the community from across Pennsylvania. It was just a really beautiful night. We were probably downstairs till almost midnight, and then went upstairs, maybe got in bed around 1 o'clock, and this happened about an hour later.
Around 2, right? Authorities said Balmer admitted to harboring hatred towards Governor Shapiro, and had he confronted Shapiro in the residence, would have beaten him with his hammer. Pennsylvania State Police said Balmer later called 911, identified himself, and said Shapiro, who is Jewish, needs to know that he will not take part in his plans for what he wants to do to the Palestinian people. Balmer, being held without bail, faces a series of charges including arson, burglary, attempted murder, and terrorism.
It's our first time back in this room.
It is? Wow.
I was in here at about maybe 3 o'clock in the morning with the fire chief when it became immediately apparent to me this wasn't just, an accidental fire, candle being left on or something.
You said it was clear to you it's not an accidental fire. It's clear to everyone now that that's not what happened. Was this a hate crime?
I think that's a question for the prosecutors to determine. They're going to determine motive.
But what does your gut tell you? I mean, this man was talking about Gaza, talking about Palestine, talking about his hatred for you.
I recognize when you're in these positions of power, there are people out there that want to do you harm. But I try not to be captive to the fear, and I try not to worry or think about why people want to do that harm.
You say you don't want to be captive to it, but this is something we're seeing. This is a dramatic and scary example of it. We're seeing this kind of rise in threats and attacks all across the country. Homeland Security has been warning about it for years.
Yeah. It's real. I mean, this is sadly a real part of our society today, and it needs to be universally condemned, George. I don't care if it's coming from the left, from the right. I don't care if it's coming from someone who you voted for or someone who you didn't vote for, someone on your team or someone on the other team. I think every single leader has a responsibility to speak and act with moral clarity and condemn this kind of violence.
Are you surprised he was able to get this far, actually get into the mansion?
Look, there were clearly security failures, and I want you to know I have confidence in the Pennsylvania State Police. to learn from it, to address it. We're bringing in a third party, an independent law enforcement leader to review our protocols, to review our systems and make them even better.
You talked about hearing from fellow governors, people from all over Pennsylvania, all over the country. Have you heard from President Trump?
I haven't.
Not at all?
No.
Anybody in the administration?
I heard immediately that day from Director Patel of the FBI, and I've heard from Attorney General Bondi.
Attorney General Bondi has not yet said this was an act of domestic terrorism. Do you believe it was?
I think that's a question for the prosecutors, both the local district attorney and the Department of Justice.
Why don't you want to address that question? Because we even saw Senator Schumer today sent a letter to the Attorney General saying he believes this should be labeled and investigated as a hate crime.
I'm not sure it's helpful for people on the outside to be weighing in with their opinions here, George, no matter who they are. You've asked me a couple times why I haven't sort of given you maybe the kind of answer that you're seeking. I want to explain why.
Yeah.
I know as a former prosecutor how important it is to follow the evidence and apply the law, and to do so without fear or favor. In this case, I'm the victim of the crime. I'm not the prosecutor. The prosecutors will weigh all of the different evidence, determine what the motive is. I think for me to dwell on that, to focus on that, is not my job.
Part of that job is to combat the kind of conditions we're seeing that create the opportunity for situations like this. Pennsylvania is no stranger to this. We saw the attack in the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2018. How do you combat this kind of hate?
By speaking and acting with moral clarity. Let me explain. Immediately following the assassination attempt on the former president, now president, in Butler, Pennsylvania, I condemned that in the strongest of terms. I spoke to the victims. I went to Butler. When the assassin who killed the U.S. healthcare CEO was caught in Altoona, Pennsylvania, I immediately went there and condemned that kind of violence in clear terms. And I think it's also important when you're not dealing with a traumatic event in Butler, in Altoona, or here in Harrisburg, to be leading every day in a way that brings people together and doesn't just continually divide us.
I know you know this, but Republican Congressman of Pennsylvania comes out and says that your rhetoric about President Trump, he didn't quite say is partly to blame for this, but he cited it as something that people have to get under control.
Again, I think leaders have a responsibility to speak and act with moral clarity, and that particular congressman failed yet again.
The governor and first lady are determined to welcome everyone back to their home.
This is a room for everyone. This is a room that has a mezuzah on the wall and a Christmas tree in the corner and a prayer mat for those who are celebrating Ramadan. And we want this place to be back and functioning for people of all faiths and all walks of life as quickly as possible.
Not going to change.
Absolutely not.
You can see this has really had an effect on the governor and his family, but they are determined, as you just saw right there, to get this up and running. The mansion was swamped with work people yesterday trying to get this renovation under control, but the devastation was really severe.
Really scary for the family, too, to be there at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, George.